I'm Leah Morgan, 24, the quiet one in the family, currently a freelance illustrator who spends more time sketching strangers in cafes than speaking in group chats. The ballroom smelled like fondant and floral perfume. Pink balloons framed the arched entryway, spelling out Sophie's Sweet 16 in gold foil. I stepped inside wearing my secondhand black dress and sneakers, my only clean pair trying to shrink into the wallpaper. Glittering streamers dangled from the ceiling like chandelier tears, and speakers pulsed a bass-heavy remix of a song I didn't recognize. Everyone else did. They were screaming the lyrics like it was oxygen. Sophie stood on a stage in a white corset dress, tiara sparkling under soft purple lights, surrounded by a ring of her friends. Cameras flashed as she did a little bow and flipped her hair. My cousin Cassie waved a phone wildly, live streaming everything. I kept close to the buffet table, nibbling a cube of cheese that tasted like plastic. Hands shoved deep into my coat pockets. The DJ shouted something about the next surprise, and the crowd screamed louder. A security guard brushed past me toward the velvet rope near the cake platform. "Sorry. Guests only pass this point," he said without looking at me. I blinked. "I'm her sister," I said quietly. He turned to me, scanning my face like I was holding a bomb. "They didn't give me your name on the list." I stared at him. "We share a last name. I was literally at her last birthday. I helped make the slides for the screen. I don't make the rules." He nodded toward the booth where the organizer stood. "You can talk to the coordinator if it's an issue." But I didn't. I just backed away slowly, holding my breath so it wouldn't catch on the lump rising in my throat. I stood by the wall, half hidden by a giant teddy bear wrapped in LED lights, as they brought out the 5-tier cake with cascading sparklers and edible gold. A chant went up, "Sophie. Sophie, Sophie." No one noticed I wasn't standing beside her. No one asked why. If you've ever been in a room full of people cheering for someone you love, while forgetting you exist, drop a comment. Or just hit like. I want to know I'm not alone in this feeling. The music cut. Lights dimmed. And then it happened. A woman in sunglasses, jeans, and a leather jacket stepped up on stage with a cordless mic. The room gasped as they recognized her Ariana Grey, the pop singer Sophie worshipped, the one whose poster covered her entire bedroom wall. Sophie screamed, jumping in place. Ariana smiled warmly. "Happy birthday." "Sophie, I heard you're a big fan, but I'm actually here for someone else." She paused. "I was sent a portfolio last month, someone who drew me in 6 different styles, all from memory. No references, no tracing. It was the most haunting, beautiful fan art I've seen in years. I tracked the email back to someone here. Everyone turned. Ariana raised her hand and pointed directly at me. "Leah Morgan. Are you here?" My stomach dropped. Eyes turned toward the wall, toward me. I took a hesitant step forward. Murmurs rippled like a wave across the room. Ariana extended her hand. "I've been looking for you. You're the real artist." The room fell silent. Even Sophie stopped smiling. I felt every gaze land on me like a second skin, hot and electric. And for the first time all night, they saw me. The silence was sharp, one of those rare pauses where even the music forgets to keep playing. I stood there, halfway between the dessert table and the stage, arms locked stiffly at my sides, unsure what to do with them now that the world was staring. Sophie's mouth was slightly open, still holding the knife she'd been about to slice her cake with. Ariana's hand was still extended. "Come on up here, Leah." I took a step, then another. The lights didn't dim for me, but they didn't need to. That short walk to the platform felt longer than any sketch I'd ever labored over. I caught glimpses of my relative's Aunt Janelle blinking in slow confusion. Uncle Mark tilting his head like maybe I'd snuck in under a fake name. My mother didn't move. My father looked like someone had whispered a different ending to his favorite movie. When I reached the stage, Ariana pulled me into a soft, quick hug. Her voice, when she leaned in, was surprisingly gentle. Your email had no bio, no link, just the art. I had to beg my manager to help me find you. I nodded, still frozen. I didn't think you'd see it. I see what matters, she said. Behind us. The camera flashes restarted, this time pointed at me. The DJ tried to cue up one of her songs, but Ariana raised a hand. No music yet. Let her have this moment. And then she looked at me again and said, into the mic. Your art made me feel more real than my own reflection. The room was too quiet. I could hear someone's bracelet clinking as they lowered their drink in slow motion. I turned my head. Sophie's expression had shifted, from shock to something else. Tight-lipped, silent, watching. My feet hit the carpet again a minute later, and the spell began to break. Ariana signed a napkin for Sophie, took a photo with her too, and promised her team would follow up with me for some kind of creative opportunity. Something about cover art, merch designs. I couldn't really hear it. By then, the party had resumed its beat, but it didn't feel the same. I slipped out the side door before the sparklers could be relit. Outside, it was raining, softly, like the sky had been listening and didn't want to make things worse. My phone buzzed in my purse. Mom, why didn't you tell us you sent her your art? No question mark, no emoji, no curiosity, just blame wrapped in lowercase letters. I stared at the message. A dozen versions of a reply formed, each one beginning with, because no one ever asks. But I didn't send anything. I put the phone away and walked across the parking lot to my old Honda. I didn't cry. I wasn't sad. Not exactly. I just felt seen. And now I wasn't sure what to do with it. Let me back up a little. It's always been Sophie, from the moment she was born. My parents called her the miracle baby. I was 5 at the time, old enough to remember the way Mom smiled at her differently, how Dad used to joke at family dinners. Sophie's our sunshine, Leah's the storm cloud. He meant it as a laugh. But even at 8, I knew I didn't get the same nicknames. Sophie liked attention, and she was good at it. She was loud, charming, photogenic. She danced. She sang. She made friends in under 3 seconds and kept them like secrets. By the time she turned 10, she was already the main act in every school recital and birthday slideshow. At 12, she had a TikTok following bigger than some small towns. My parents bought ring lights and pastel backdrops. I got silence if I brought up drawing. I'd started sketching in 3rd grade. A teacher had given me a sketch pad when I wouldn't speak during class discussions. Maybe pictures are your language, she'd said. I filled that pad in 2 weeks. Over the years, I found a rhythm with it. I drew during car rides, at family reunions, in the corner at holiday dinners. No one stopped me, but no one ever looked too closely either. When Sophie turned 15, the family rented a house in Malibu for her party. I made her a custom illustration of her and her idol Ariana, of course floating on clouds, holding mics shaped like stars. I wrapped it in pink cellophane. She never opened it. It stayed on the gift table, untouched, while she live-streamed herself unboxing makeup kits and wireless headphones. I took it home 3 days later. It's still in my closet. So, this year, I didn't bother with a gift. Instead, I sent 6 portraits to Ariana's fan mail account. No real hope, no real plan. I didn't sign them with more than LM. And my Gmail. I didn't even mention Sophie, but she saw them. Ariana did. And in one moment, 1 minute on a stage under someone else's spotlight, I felt real. Driving home that night, headlights blurred through the misty windshield. My phone buzzed again. A message from my cousin Clara this time. Clara, did you really draw all that? That's insane. Leah, I didn't know you were legit? I smiled. First time she texted me in months. By the time I pulled into the driveway, the rain had slowed, the porch light was on, but the house looked quiet. Inside, my parents were in the living room. Mom was folding napkins from the party, like muscle memory. Dad was watching a rerun of something old and laugh-tracked. Neither looked up when I entered. You left early, Mom said, still folding. Yeah. Did you thank Sophie for inviting you? Dad added. I paused. She didn't. I RSVP'd through Aunt Linda. Silence. Then Mom said, still, it was her night. Just remember that. I nodded once and walked to my room. I didn't slam the door. I didn't cry. Instead, I opened my sketch pad and started drawing again. This time, not for recognition, not for applause, not even for Ariana, just to remember how it felt being seen. The next morning was quiet. Too quiet. That kind of silence you get after a storm, not peaceful, just hollow. I padded into the kitchen barefoot, wearing an oversized hoodie and yesterday's thoughts. Mom was already there, stirring her coffee like it had personally offended her. She didn't look up. You have an email, she said flatly. I blinked. What? Something from that singer, Ariana. It went to my inbox. Don't know how she even got it. She slid her phone across the counter without another word. I picked it up, my pulse doubling in speed as I saw the name. Subject for Leah Morgan, collaboration inquiry. I tapped it open. Hands suddenly cold. Dear Leah, it was a pleasure meeting you last night. I'm serious about working together. My team would love to commission you for a few concept art pieces for my new tour visuals. If you're interested, we'd like to start with a trial sketch set paid. Of course. Attached are the details. Let me know if you're available this week. With admiration, Ariana Gray. I stared at the screen. Then I checked again. Like maybe I'd misread it. Trial sketches. Paid. I handed the phone back to Mom. She glanced at me, her mouth pressing into a tight line. That's nice, she said. Nice. Not congratulations. Not I'm proud of you. Not even good job. Just nice. I opened the fridge, pulled out the milk, poured it into a chipped mug, and stood there sipping like nothing had changed. But everything had. Later that day, I took the old bus downtown to my favorite sketching cafe. It wasn't fancy, just chipped paint, warm coffee, and soft indie music humming through worn speakers. I liked the window seat, where I could pretend the city was performing just for me. I opened my pad and began sketching. Not Ariana this time, but Sophie. Her face from last night frozen in that moment after the mic was passed, when the applause wasn't hers. I tried to capture the tightness in her jaw, the forced smile, the way her fingers curled around the cake knife. I didn't know why I was drawing her. Maybe to understand, maybe to forgive. I used to think we were just too different. But now I realized we were both performers. Hers was just louder. My phone. Aunt Linda Sophie's been crying all morning. Can you talk to her? I stared at the screen. No preamble, no context. Just a demand wrapped in a guilt trip. Before I could think twice, I typed why the typing bubbles appeared. Then stopped. Then appeared again. Aunt Linda. She feels overshadowed. You should have told us about doing all this. It was her party. The party. The spotlight. Her name on the balloons. Her face on the cupcake toppers. And yet, My silence was hypnotic. I didn't respond. Instead, I went back to the sketch. I gave Sophie softer eyes instead of rounded cheeks, a kind of quiet that she never showed in public. I wanted to draw the version of her I remember under the phones and the stage lights. The little girl who once snuck into my room to ask if she could sleep on the floor beside my bed, because the thunder sounded like monsters. I missed that Sophie, but she wasn't at the party last night. When I got home, Sophie was waiting. Not in her room, not surrounded by friends or lights. She was in mine, sitting cross-legged on the floor beside my bookshelf, flipping through my old sketchbooks. She looked up as I entered. "You drew all these?" My heart clenched. "Yeah." She held up one sketch us as kids, sitting on swings, our legs just little sticks dangling. "I remember this day," she said softly. "You pushed me so high." I cried. I smiled faintly. "You begged me to." She didn't smile back. "You're really good, Leah." I sat on the edge of my bed, unsure what to say. "I didn't mean to make everything about me," she said. "It's just, I thought that's what I was supposed to do." I looked at her. "You didn't forget my birthday, Sophie. Everyone else did. You just didn't notice." She swallowed hard, blinking fast. "I didn't even know it was the same week." I nodded. "I know." Silence again. Then she said, "I was scared last night." "Why?" "Because I thought if people see you, really see you, they might not need me anymore." The honesty in her voice startled me. It didn't sound manipulative or rehearsed. Just raw. "You're not replaceable," I said quietly. "We're just different." She nodded, then whispered, "It felt like you stole something." I exhaled slowly. I didn't ask for that moment. "Sophie." It came to me. "I know," she murmured. "That's what makes it worse." I didn't know how to respond, so I didn't. She stood up, brushing imaginary lint off her leggings. "I'll tell Mom and Dad to leave you alone about it." "Thanks." She turned to go, then paused at the door. "You should say yes to Ariana." "I already did." A small smile flickered across her face. "Good. You deserve it." And then she was gone. That night. I sent my sketches to Ariana's manager. I included a few extra portraits I hadn't planned to one of her mid-performance, one of a faceless girl in the crowd, hands raised, and one of myself, loosely outlined, caught, mid-doubt. By midnight, I got a reply. "These are stunning. Let's set up a call tomorrow." I stared at the screen, both thrilled and terrified. I'd always dreamed of this moment being recognized, being wanted for my craft. But now that it was here, it felt like standing on the edge of a cliff, 1 foot hovering. I'd spent so many years living in Sophie's echo that I didn't know how to exist in full sound. But I wanted to try. So I opened a new canvas, clicked the stylus, and began again. This time, the first line I drew wasn't of anyone else. It was mine. The next few days passed like I was floating, not in a dream, but in that strange, weightless space where time stretches and contracts around sudden change. My inbox became a place I checked obsessively. Ariana's team sent over design briefs, reference photos, and tour themes. They wanted surreal, emotional visuals, things that could be projected behind her as she sang. Her manager even said, "She wants the kind of illustrations that make people feel like they're dreaming with their eyes open." That line stayed with me. I worked late into the night, sometimes forgetting to eat. I lost myself in sketch layers, color palettes, textures, and motion effects. For the first time in years, the silence in my room didn't feel suffocating. It felt sacred. Meanwhile, the family group chat was busy with Sophie's post-party photos. "Aunt Janelle, Sophie, you looked stunning. That dress Uncle Mark cake was amazing. What a night, Mom. So proud of you. Sophie, my little star. No mention of what happened on stage. No mention of Ariana. No mention of me. Not that I was surprised. Recognition, in this house, was always selective. I didn't say anything. I just kept drawing. But then, on Thursday afternoon, something strange happened. I came downstairs to refill my tea and found Dad sitting at the kitchen table, scrolling on his phone. He looked up, cleared his throat, and said, "That drawing of Ariana floating above a burning city, that was yours." I blinked. "Yeah. How did you see that it's been reposted?" "Everywhere. I saw it on Instagram. Some fan page called it iconic." He chuckled, half awkward. "Didn't realize you were doing work like that." I opened a cabinet, trying to hide the flush in my cheeks. "You never asked." He nodded slowly. "That's fair." And then, he surprised me. I was wrong to ignore it, he said. I turned to him. "What you always like to draw?" He said. "I just thought it was a phase, something you'd grow out of." I stared at him, unsure if I should be grateful or angry. "I guess I was busy focusing on Sophie's thing," he admitted. It was easier to cheer for the one asking for it. I let the words sit for a moment. Then I said, "I was asking. Just not with words." He looked down, nodded once, and said nothing else. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't emotional. But it was something. Later that night, I heard a knock on my door. Sophie poked her head in. "Do you have a minute?" I nodded. She stepped inside, holding her phone like a prop. Ariana followed me back. I raised an eyebrow. "Really?" "Yeah." She liked one of my posts. I think she felt bad or something. I didn't say anything. I didn't want to turn this into another competition. Sophie sat on my bed. "I've been thinking." About she bit her lip. "I don't actually know what I want to do." I waited. "I've always loved being the center of attention." "You know that," she said. "But I don't know if it's me or just what everyone expects." I nodded slowly. "It's hard to tell the difference sometimes." She looked down at her lap. "You were doing all this incredible stuff in silence. Meanwhile, I was screaming into a phone camera and calling it content." I almost laughed. "That's still a skill." "Maybe. But yours feels deeper." I shrugged. "Different. Maybe. Not deeper." We sat in silence for a while. Then she said, "Would you teach me?" I blinked. "Teach you to draw?" I paused. "Why, I don't know," she admitted. "Maybe I just want to feel what it's like to create something without an audience." That caught me off guard. I reached over, grabbed one of my spare sketchbooks from the shelf, and handed it to her. "No erasers," I said. "You make mistakes. You live with them." She smiled. "That sounds terrifying." "It is," I said. "But it's also honest." For the first time in what felt like years, we just sat there, two sisters, no spotlight, just paper and pencils. The next morning, my inbox dinged again. Ariana's team wanted to do a call with her directly, a video meeting. I panicked. I'd never been on a call with someone famous, not like that. I didn't know what to wear, or how to sit, or whether I should make eye contact with a webcam. Sophie helped me pick a blouse. Dad ironed it. Mom stood in the hallway with a mug of tea I didn't ask for. It was surreal. When Ariana's face popped up on the screen, I felt like I'd walked into a dream. She smiled. "Leah, you look just like your drawings." Mysterious and calm. I laughed nervously. "You look like you're in a Vogue spread." She grinned. "Only because I hired 3 people to make me look awake." The meeting was short, but intense. She walked me through the themes of her tour Rebirth, silence, chaos, solitude, and light. She wanted me to create visuals that embodied contradiction, joy, and sadness, strength and stillness. I chose you, she said, because you see things the way I feel them. After the call, I sat frozen at my desk. She chose me, not because of followers, or flash, or fame, because of how I saw. That night, the family had dinner together, something that hadn't happened in months. Mom made Sophie's favorite lasagna. Dad opened a bottle of wine. We didn't talk about the party, or Ariana, or art. But when I reached for the parmesan, Mom stopped me. "Leah," she said, "would you mind showing Grandma your drawing? The one that's been going around online?" I looked at her. "Surprised?" She added softly, "She keeps asking about it." I nodded. After dinner, I brought out my sketch pad. Grandma adjusted her glasses, peering down at the pages with slow reverence. "This is the one?" she asked, pointing to the burning city piece. "Yeah." She touched the edge of the paper. "It reminds me of the war. Beauty in the middle of fire. That was the highest compliment I'd ever received." Later, as the dishes clinked in the sink and Sophie dozed on the couch, I sat outside on the porch alone. The stars were faint, but steady. I breathed. For once, I wasn't invisible. I wasn't loud either, but I was present, whole, and finally, enough. The day the tour visuals were officially announced, I was at the post office, mailing a hand-drawn birthday card to a friend in Oregon. My phone vibrated in my pocket non-stop. I didn't check it until I got back to my car, arms full of envelopes, receipts, and leftover nerves. It was all over social media. Ariana's team had posted the teaser. One of my illustrations, Ariana suspended in midair with wings made of broken glass and storm clouds swirling behind her, was front and center. The caption read, "Visual Concept Art by Leah Morgan. World Tour begins June." My name, in bold. I stared at the screen until the background music from the gas station across the street broke my trance. And then I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because the whole world had somehow changed. And yet, I still had to drive home and figure out what to make for lunch. When I walked through the front door, Sophie was sitting cross-legged on the floor in the foyer, sketchbook open, pencil smudges on her cheeks. She looked up at me with wide eyes. "You're trending," she said. I saw. "Your name is in Rolling Stone. Not a picture. Not a tag. Your actual name." "I know." She grinned, toothy and unpolished, like when we were kids and caught eating frosting off the cake before it was sliced. "That's insane." I sat down beside her, letting the mail spill onto the rug. "What are you drawing?" She turned the book around. It was a girl, quiet, freckled, with her arms wrapped around her knees, one eye peeking out. "I was trying to draw how I feel," she said, "but she still looks too pretty. It's a start." She nodded, chewing the inside of her cheek. "Do you feel different now?" "What do you mean? Now that people see you?" I took a moment before answering. "I feel more solid, like I was always here. But now the air wraps around me differently. That's poetic." I smiled. "Maybe I've been holding poetry in for too long." She laughed, then frowned. "Are you gonna leave?" I looked at her. "Leave for LA. Or New York. Wherever artists go to become mysterious and cool." "I don't know," I admitted. "I haven't decided yet." She nodded, looking back down at her sketch. "I don't want to be the only one here. It's not as fun being the center of attention when no one's clapping." I didn't respond right away, because there it was, again, the quiet tug of guilt, the gravitational pull of family dynamics, the unspoken expectation that even your dreams should orbit someone else's needs. Later that evening, Mom asked if we could all eat together again. "We'll order in," she said. "No stress." We ended up around the table with paper plates and takeout containers, passing soy sauce and spring rolls like we were strangers playing a game of familiarity. Grandma had joined us too, her hands shaking slightly as she picked at lo mein. "I saw your name on the news," she said to me suddenly, eyes soft behind cloudy lenses. "Your grandfather would have said that made you the real artist in the family." My stomach twisted. "I didn't know anyone else in the family drew," I said. She smiled. "He painted quietly, mostly landscapes, gave them away before anyone could praise him." I swallowed. "Why he didn't think art was for attention," she said. "He thought it was a kind of prayer." I looked down at my chopsticks. Sophie reached over, stealing a dumpling off my plate. "So," she said, mouth full, "are we going to your art show one day or what?" Dad chuckled. "Only if we get VIP seats." I raised an eyebrow. "It's not a concert," Mom added. "Maybe it should be. With lights and music and an opening act," Grandma whispered. "You'll need wine and velvet ropes. Artists are supposed to be dramatic." We all laughed. Even me. It was the first time I felt like I belonged at the table. Not as an extra, not as a shadow, but as myself. After dinner, Sophie knocked on my door again. She stood there holding one of my old drawings, the one I had made of us years ago, two girls on swings, sun in our eyes, shoes kicked off in the grass. "I want to hang this in my room," she said. "Okay, and I want to draw us again, but older." I tilted my head. "Why?" "Because the first one's how we started," she said. "But it's not who we are now." I handed her a fresh page. She sat beside me, knees touching mine, and we drew in silence. Two girls again, one leaning forward, one finally opening her arms. In the following week, Ariana's team confirmed 2 official commissions. I'd be working on animated visuals for her live performance of a new ballad, plus a limited edition tour poster. They even offered to fly me out for the dress rehearsal in LA. When I told my parents, they nodded. "You'll be careful," Mom said. "You'll keep us updated," Dad added. Sophie just whispered, "I knew you'd leave." "I'm not leaving yet," I said. "Just visiting." But she didn't answer. And I wondered what happens when you finally bloom in a garden that was never watered for you. Do you leave or do you stay and teach them how to plant on the day of my flight? I stood in my room, suitcase open, sketchpad tucked between layers of sweaters. I stared at my closet, unsure what to wear to meet people who thought of me as an artist, not a sister or daughter or shadow. Sophie walked in. "You should wear the black one," she said. "Makes you look serious, like someone who knows her own name." I pulled the dress off the hanger. "Thanks." She stepped closer, holding out a small gift wrapped in tissue paper. "Open it when you land." "I will." We hugged. It was clumsy, tight, real. And then she said the thing that stuck: "Don't shrink again, even if it gets loud." I nodded, heart thudding in my chest. At the airport, I sat by the window, watching planes ascend like paper dreams. My phone buzzed. "Ariana's manager. Excited to meet you." "Pack light will keep you busy." I smiled, then opened Sophie's gift. Inside was a pencil, sharpened to a fine point, and a tiny note that read, "For drawing the world the way only you can." I held it tightly, like a compass, and as the plane began to lift, I didn't look back. Not because I was running from home, but because for the first time I was flying toward myself. Los Angeles was louder than I remembered. The air was dry, electric. Neon signs blinked like impatient thoughts. Palm trees lined the boulevard like tall, passive onlookers. I'd been here once, years ago, on a family trip when Sophie was 10 and still calling herself a future pop star. I spent most of that trip sketching people in cafes while she danced in front of strangers for phone videos. This time, I came alone. No distractions, no backup. Just a name and an email, and a promise of being seen. Ariana's team picked me up in a sleek black SUV. The assistant who greeted me at the terminal, Jules, looked younger than me but carried herself like a hurricane with a to-do list. She handed me an iced matcha, said, "Welcome to LA," and told me I'd be meeting the tour's creative director in 45 minutes. No time to hesitate. The rehearsal space was hidden behind a nondescript gray building in Burbank. Inside, it was a world of movement dancers stretching, choreographers shouting counts, lighting technicians adjusting rigging with military precision. Jules guided me backstage to a smaller room filled with screens. On them played test visuals, my visuals flashing across virtual stages in loops. It was surreal, seeing my work projected on a 10-foot wall while strangers critiqued color balances and motion speeds. "She's here," Jules announced. The creative director turned. His name was Rafe Tall. Sharp. Blunt. "So you're the ghost artist?" "I guess so," I said. He looked me up and down like I was both a revelation and a problem. "You're good. Too good. Makes everyone else nervous. Should I apologize?" He smirked. "Never. We need that." We dove straight into reviewing my animations. He loved the mirror flood scene, Ariana walking across a floor that cracked with reflections of her younger self. He wanted more movement, more fluidity, more risk. "Make it weirder," he said. "Make it hurt." By the time Ariana walked in, I was halfway through editing the fire simulation. She wore oversized sunglasses, no makeup, and a hoodie that swallowed her frame. Still, the room shifted as she entered, like even the air stepped back. She sat beside me quietly, watching, then said, "You made my pain beautiful." I swallowed. "You made it visible first." She reached over, adjusted the slider on my tablet. Less red, more white in the flames. It should feel like mourning, not rage. We spent the rest of the afternoon side by side, crafting grief in gradients. By dusk, rehearsal wrapped. I was offered a ride to my hotel, but I chose to walk. I needed the quiet. I wandered through unfamiliar streets until I found a park bench under a jacaranda tree. The petals had fallen like confetti. I called Sophie. She answered on the second ring. "Leah, I met everyone today. You sound different. I feel different." She didn't say anything for a moment. Then, "Are they nice?" "Some are. Most are intense. But they care. About you?" I smiled. About the art, which, in a weird way, is the same thing. She was quiet again. Then she whispered, "I started drawing you last night." "Oh yeah, it was bad. But it felt real." I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. "Don't stop," I said. "Even if it's bad." We hung up with soft goodnights. I sat there for a long time afterward, listening to the buzz of the city and wondering how many versions of myself I had shed just to reach this one. Back at the hotel, my inbox was full. Press inquiries, podcast invitations, a gallery asking if I'd consider an exhibit. It felt like too much. I closed the laptop and lay back on the stiff mattress, staring at the ceiling's blank whiteness. Recognition. I was learning. Didn't always come with comfort. Sometimes it came with exposure, with pressure, with 100 people telling you what your voice should sound like when you've only just started speaking. The next morning, during final run-throughs, Ariana pulled me aside. "I need a favor," she said. "Anything. There's this one visual hollow chorus, the one with all the faceless figures bowing. It's haunting, but I want it to feel more personal. Okay. How? She hesitated. Add your sister? I blinked. What you said, she inspired part of it. I want that feeling. The imbalance. The ache of not being seen. I nodded slowly. All right. I spent the next 2 hours rendering Sophie's silhouette into the scene, just enough detail to recognize her, her frame, her posture, her head slightly turned away, like she's about to say something but never does. When the test projection ran, Ariana stood still in the center of the darkened rehearsal room, watching. When the lights came up, she turned to me. That's it. Later that day, I was scheduled for a short Q&A video for the tour's behind-the-scenes feature. They handed me a mic, sat me on a stool, and said, "Talk about your work like no one ever interrupted you." I wasn't used to that, but I tried. I talked about how I used to draw in silence, at family parties, on the edge of someone else's celebration, how I built whole worlds in sketchbooks no one ever opened, how my sister taught me what it meant to perform, and my art taught me how to disappear until I learned to make those disappearances into stories. Now, I said, I draw not to hide, but to speak. That night, they took us to a private dinner on a rooftop downtown. The air was heavy with jasmine and low conversation. Ariana raised a toast to those who were invisible and decided not to stay that way. Everyone clapped. I sipped my wine and stared at the skyline. L.A. looked like a painting, sharp lights softened by distance. When I returned to my hotel, I called home again. Sophie picked up. Did you do it? She asked. I did. Did they like it? They clapped. You okay? I paused. Yes, I said. And I meant it. We talked until I heard her start to yawn. Then I said, I miss you. She replied, come home when you're ready. Not before. And for once, no part of me felt guilty. Before bed, I opened my sketchpad and started drawing again. Not for Ariana. Not for the tour. Just a girl on a swing. Alone, but smiling. Coming home felt different this time. The cab rolled down our street. The houses exactly where I left them. The same cracked pavement. The same overgrown hedge outside the neighbor's yard. But my heart moved slower, softer, like it didn't need to brace for impact anymore. I stepped out with a carry-on and a satchel full of new sketchbooks, eyes tired but steady. The porch light was on. Sophie was waiting. She ran out barefoot, arms wide, hair in a bun like she forgot to care about perfection. She hugged me before I could even put my bag down. You smell like plain air and hotel soap, she said, pulling away and wrinkling her nose. You smell like crayons and peanut butter. We both laughed. Mom stood behind the screen door. You're early. Changed my flight, I said. Didn't want to sit through another hotel breakfast pretending to like eggs that bounce. She didn't smile, but she opened the door. Inside, the house was still the house, same ticking kitchen clock, same faint hum of the fridge, same carpet stains shaped like memories, but the air was less heavy. Over dinner, Sophie's favorite tacos and a decent attempt at guacamole. No one brought up the tour. Not at first, not directly. But Dad cleared his throat halfway through and asked, what was the venue like? I paused. Tortilla halfway to my mouth. Loud, cold, huge. And Ariana, she's thoughtful, sharp. She listens with her eyes. He nodded. That was it. Later, when dishes were done and Mom went to bed early, I found Sophie on the back steps, sketchpad in her lap. She tilted it toward me. A drawing of two girls, one with stars for eyes, the other with a sun in her chest. I don't know who's who, she said quietly. Maybe we're both, I said. We sat there, silence wrapping around us like a shawl. No need to fill it. No need to define anything. The next few days settled into something strange and beautiful. Sophie and I began drawing together in the mornings. She was better than I expected, her lines still shaky, but full of story. I started helping her learn proportion, shading, how to breathe emotion into silence. She taught me how to post my work without second-guessing, how to pick soundtracks for reels, how to use the algorithm without losing your soul. We became collaborators, sisters again. The first time Mom walked in on us laughing over a sketch of a dancing duck with sunglasses. She stopped in the doorway, not disapproving, not confused, just observing. Eventually she asked, "Are you two working on something?" Sophie answered before I could. "Just healing." That word didn't land smoothly in the air, but it didn't shatter anything either. A few days later, I got a package. No name on the label, just a studio address from LA. Inside was a framed print of my tour illustration, the one with Ariana levitating above cracked marble and a handwritten note. "Some truths don't need a microphone. You gave me a mirror. Now give the world a window. A." Beneath the note was a contract. Ariana wanted a full illustrated book, not a memoir, an emotional visual narrative. "Draw what words leave behind," she wrote. My breath caught. This was more than a gig. This was a legacy. I showed Sophie. She grabbed the paper, eyes wide. "You're doing it." "Right." I hesitated. "It's big." She folded the paper carefully and placed it in my lap. "So are you." That night, I stayed up sketching until my fingers cramped. I drew fire that didn't burn, voices tangled in vines, windows made of memory. I drew Sophie, and then I drew myself beside her, not in the background, not behind, but next to her. In the morning, I sent Ariana a message, "Let's build it." She replied with a heart and a flame emoji. A week passed. Then two. Grandma came over one afternoon. She brought over an old painting, one of Grandpa's. A lake at sunset, watercolors bleeding softly. She handed it to me. "He would have liked you. I would have liked him too." She nodded. "You make art the same way. Quiet, but undeniable." Later, while cleaning out the garage, Dad found a box of my childhood drawings. He carried it inside like it was fragile. "These are yours," he said, setting it down. We never knew what to do with them. I opened it. Crayon castles, pencil dragons, paper people with upside-down smiles. I started crying before I even touched them. Sophie knelt beside me, arms wrapping around my shoulders. "You've always been making magic," she whispered. "We just didn't know how to see it." I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. Recognition isn't always loud. Sometimes it arrives like this. A cardboard box full of forgotten truths. A sister who finally sees your shadows and stays. A family who doesn't say sorry, but begins again in actions. That evening, we sat down to dinner, no celebration, no cake, just the four of us. Real, quiet, present. Halfway through, Mom cleared her throat. "Did we ever tell you how we chose your name?" I looked up. "No." She smiled faintly. "We almost went with Lily, but when you were born, the nurse said you looked like Aaliyah. Calm, thoughtful, like you'd noticed the things others missed." I nodded slowly. "I think she was right," Mom added. After dinner, I went back to my room. On my desk sat the contract. I signed it, slid it into an envelope, and taped a pencil to the back, Sophie's pencil, the one she gave me before I flew. Then I took one last look at the swing sketch I'd taped on my wall, us, side by side, midair, not reaching, just existing, together. The world could wait. Tonight, I was home. And that was enough. Weeks passed, but the weight of that moment, the signature, the envelope, The pencil never left me. It stayed with me in the smallest ways, in the way my pen felt heavier when I started a new drawing, in the hush that settled over the house whenever I spoke about my next project. In Sophie's eyes, watching me not with envy, but with something more complicated, something that looked a little like reverence and a little like longing. I'd started working on Ariana's book quietly. I kept most of it under wraps, even from family, not because I didn't trust them, but because I wasn't ready to explain what I was making. The book wasn't just about Ariana. It was about all the invisible people who built themselves in the dark. It was about silence, neglect, little hurts that didn't bleed but left bruises anyway. I drew late into the night, my lamp casting a halo over pages filled with aching hands. Mothers turned away, children folding themselves into corners. Sometimes I'd hear Sophie pacing in her room, restless. Other nights, she'd knock softly and sit beside me as I worked, sketching quietly or just watching the lines form. One night, she asked, "Is this really what it felt like I didn't answer?" I just handed her the page I'd just finished. It showed a girl sitting in a room full of mirrors, but every reflection showed someone else. She didn't ask again. In early spring, Ariana's team sent the official schedule. There would be a gallery exhibition in New York, followed by a soft book launch, a panel talk, and then a short promotional tour across 3 cities. They wanted me to attend, to speak, to answer questions in front of people. The thought made my stomach twist. "I don't think I can do it," I said one night at dinner. Dad looked up from his plate. "Do what? Speak? On a stage? About the book?" He shrugged. "You draw emotion better than most people explain it. That's already speaking. But it's different," I said. "This would be me standing in front of strangers, trying to explain why I turned my childhood into a set of charcoal drawings." Sophie put down her fork. "You don't have to explain. You just have to show up." That stuck with me. The day of the exhibition, I flew to New York alone. Sophie had begged to come, but she had school and a project due. Mom offered to go in her place, but I politely declined. I needed to be by myself this time, not as rebellion, just as a statement that I could stand alone, without dissolving. The gallery was tucked into a narrow side street in Soho, its windows already plastered with posters of my artwork. Inside, white walls carried quiet echoes. The framed pieces hung like breath held too long. I stood near the back, watching people walk through. Strangers whispered to one another. Some pointed. Some took photos. Some just stood in front of a piece for minutes, unmoving. One woman touched the edge of a frame gently, like it was a wound. Her eyes filled as she looked at a drawing titled "Forgotten Seat at the Birthday Table." I didn't approach her. I didn't need to. That night, during the panel, someone asked me, "What made you draw pain so intimately?" I looked down at the mic in my hand, then up. I lived in rooms where no one looked up when I spoke. I said, so I started drawing the silence. Eventually, the silence became louder than anything else. There was no applause, just a kind of stillness. The good kind. After the talk, Ariana hugged me tight. "You did it," she said. "You opened a door. I didn't know I was allowed to. You always were." When I got back to the hotel, there was a message waiting on my phone. "Sophie, you looked beautiful, like someone I want to be when I grow up." I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I replied, "You already are." The next week, I returned home again. No fanfare, just Sophie waiting at the gate, waving like we were still 10. Back in my room, I unpacked slowly. I laid the exhibition brochure on my desk. Sophie picked it up, flipping through pages of my drawings printed on heavy matte paper. "They look different like this," she said. "How more permanent." She sat down, still flipping. "I think I want to be a storyteller." I smiled. "You already are. Not like you. Not with pencils, but maybe with words, or music, or video. Something. You should." She looked up. "Would you help me?" I nodded. Of course. The next morning, we began again. She started writing tiny vignettes, and I drew beside her. Sometimes her stories came out rushed and clumsy. Sometimes I scribbled the wrong emotion, but we laughed. We kept going. Weeks passed. Seasons shifted. We fell into a rhythm that no longer felt borrowed from someone else's dream. One day, I walked into the living room and found Mom staring at a large canvas propped against the wall. One of mine. It had arrived from the gallery, framed, sealed in glass. She turned to me, hands clasped in front of her. "This one. This was our kitchen. Wasn't it?" I nodded. "I remember those chairs, the chipped tile, and the silence." I said gently. She closed her eyes. "I'm sorry." It was the first time she said it. Not in a roundabout way. Not in a correction or a question. Just that. I didn't cry. I didn't hug her. But I stayed there beside her. And that was enough. Later, I walked past Sophie's room. Her door was half open. Inside, she was on a Zoom call, talking to a teacher about a short film idea. She said, "It's about two sisters. One speaks through music, the other through pictures. They're both invisible, but when they're together, they shine." My breath caught. I stepped away quietly, back in my room. I picked up a pencil and began to draw. One final piece. Two girls. No stage, no crowd. Just a shared bench under a tree. One listening, one drawing. Both shining. And this time, no one forgot either of them.